Good morning, church family.
Good morning.
I'm so happy to be here this morning. I have the great privilege, along with Aaron Houston and Cammie as one of the coaches, to participate in Raising My Voice. Raising My Voice is a program, a 6-week program to help women to share their story, to go out into the world and to help change the stigma that people have on either incarceration or women that have struggled with addiction in their past. And so today I have the lovely privilege of introducing Dominica Rose. Dominica, will you please share your story?
I never meant for one of my children to be born into the disease of addiction. I played the same friendly community playgrounds that my classmates did, and I had a loving mother and an older sister whom I looked up to. Family get-togethers consisted of home-cooked Italian meals, laughter, and cousins getting together bragging about who had the most Christmas presents. The only difference between my cousins playing outside and me, now that the past has been processed, is that I wasn't the one who went outside to roll down the hills in my Nana's backyard. I would stay inside and listen to the beer bottles being opened, watching closely as the wine rolled in the glasses, and asking those who smoked to blow smoke rings in my face. Now this is what I now understand as untreated alcoholism. As a child, I attended church on Sundays and I was taught to pray at a young age. My mother raised me to have awareness of child predators and always told me things that installed fear in me, like, stay away from strangers. Your blue eyes and your blonde hair are worth a lot of money. As we would watch movies that had titles like, My First Name is Steven, being raised to fear child abduction and trafficking, though I always was curious growing up and took risks that most children are told not to do. I started hanging out with crowds much older than my age and around neighborhoods that many are afraid to walk through. At the age of 12, I found myself with alcohol poisoning from older men shoving beer bottles down my throat, forcing me to drink, even though I was vomiting and spitting on myself and they were laughing at me. It was a night I'll never forget. I never stopped hanging out in the same areas and continued to be defiant, not listening to those who knew more than me. Not long after, my innocence was taken from me. And that, I believe, is when my disease started to call out for me and fill a God-sized hole with more alcohol, and then it led to drugs. I wish I could say that happened only once in my time growing up, but unfortunately, I cannot. I had lived a life battling a disease for which there is no cure, not only putting myself in harm's way, but also jeopardizing my family and my first 2 children. I remember times when my kids would be knocking on my bedroom door, telling me they were hungry. The knocks would continue as the hours went by, and all I could tell the children was, "I'll be right there." The words that rolled off my tongue, they no longer matched my heart. My addiction led to my baby girl being born into the disease at no fault of her own, my 3rd child. Her stomach was not attached to her bowel. She had 4 holes in her heart. And she was diagnosed with trisomy 21. She was born while I was homeless, due to the fact that I had lost everything from the powerlessness of this disease. Because of my excessive use of methamphetamine, I entered a level of extreme psychosis and was no longer allowed to see any of my kids. DCS, with no hesitation, slammed the door in my face. They made sure I knew I was a neglectful mother who had no right to have my children after she was born, while still keeping me from speaking with or visiting my older 2 until I could control myself enough not to cut their clothes off, assuming they were bugged by the police. My story is something I would never wish on even my worst enemy. Many who speak before you were incarcerated, but psychosis had me incarcerated in my own body and mind. For those who have never heard of psychosis, it is what I call a spiritual war inside my mind. Reality is distorted, and the voices in my head would talk louder and louder and louder the more I tried to quiet them down. I was living in a nightmare while awake. I was held hostage in my own body, and every horror movie I watched became true when my eyes were open. Every trauma I had ever endured repeated, rippling down to where I was in firm belief that every garden planted in someone's yard was a grave for a trafficked or sexually abused child. This led me to sending police and investigators to family doors and strangers' homes, only to find that the truth that needed to be uncovered was that I was powerless over my addiction and my life had become unmanageable. I was tortured by psychosis for many years, and I wore a mask to hide my face whenever I went outside. Being in a crippling state of mind and body didn't allow me to have awareness or remember things I was taught as a child. I became very afraid of things like the colors in the church glass panels here, elephants, roses, and people ran from me, making sure that they did not even come close to me. I had no one to help me and nowhere to go. And my best thinking had me move in with my supplier, and things became even darker. And the distorted reality became true, that I had been in the middle of a human trafficking ring called Midnight Productions. It's the unspoken entity that many believe has been stopped, and no one dares to speak up about. An organized human and sex trafficking ring that hides in the shadows of the night in the roughest areas, and also in places where they dance under the most magnificent chandeliers that hang in the million-dollar homes. Though I did not engage willingly in sex videos to be sold, I unfortunately did fall asleep many times. And upon waking up, I knew the needle marks in my arms were not from my own doing, and the pain stinging through my body was felt that was not given with permission. And these were things that have happened to others that I will never unsee. And what I heard behind closed doors as I lay my head down at night, still I will never unhear. I recall reaching out to my cousin, pastor and prophet Joey at First Street Church for help, and in the midst of conversation, my phone that I had hidden suddenly stopped working. It was my first attempt to reach out for help. I was as broken as that phone inside, lost and felt defeated by my lifestyle. That same week, late at night, I must have been up for weeks, afraid to fall asleep again. I took out the phone I was hiding in the lining of an old suitcase and quietly turned it on, not to disturb the man sleeping on the nearby dirty mattress. On the phone was a Bible app for children's ages 4+. And still to this day, I don't know how that appeared. I started playing with the app, and at that moment, I started thinking of my children. I wanted to know what Dante liked for breakfast, and what Savannah's favorite songs were. I was missing all the things that I know when I'm sober. That Bible app gave me hope again. I reached out for help again the next day, but this time by leaving a letter in the only house that I could remember in psychosis. The house was from back in 2010. I used to do step work there, and I spent much time in this home. The next day, my phone rang, and I had a desperation of a drowning man to seek out help and change my life. And so I was picked up, and my journey in recovery began. I couldn't do anything but look up at the sky and say, "Thank you, God." And I meant it. This began my third time in the 12-step community, as this time I knew that I had to do it somebody else's way. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more hiding behind a mask. Not ever living again in what my mother warned me about when I was at a young age. I was searching for complete freedom, and that is what working the 12 steps has delivered. It is called Freedom from the Bondage of Self. I wouldn't say that the beginning for me was easy. I got kicked out of a lot of treatments and continued to be sober but still defiant. I spent countless hours riding a bus to stay safe until I could find a roof over my head and a sober living that will help me. I remember carrying so much in the small backpack that no longer was needed, and only wanting a sign from God that I needed to surrender my will over to get help. That night, the bus doors opened and a large sign said, "This is your sign." I stared in awe. I realized God was answering prayers, and so I left that backpack on the bus and I cleared out my phone of anything that could take me back to addiction. And 3 days later, I got a bed at a sober living, and a phone number was brought to me. I knew I needed a sponsor and to do it someone else's way. And it took days before I dialed that number. And when I did, I realized I was reconnected with an old kitchen manager who helped me the day I attempted suicide back in 2010. It was hard to believe that had happened, but today I do not believe in coincidences. I feel it's God's way of staying anonymous. I stayed in psychosis for 2 years of my recovery, and even at the moments where I felt it was a dream to be sober, all I could tell myself over and over again is the words my sponsor passed down to me. When you step into the light, the darkness goes away. John 1:5 states, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." Today I stand before you with a sobriety date of April 18th of 2018, and I can say that I am recovered and grateful for a divine intervention. My child, Delilah, has been adopted by her foster parents and come to find out the foster father is a heart surgeon, and her now mother is a state advocate for children with Down syndrome. I know I had her for them, and God did for me what I could not do for myself. Dante and Savannah are home with me, and believe me when I say kids are resilient. I have 2 incredible kids with hearts bigger to help others, full of kindness and forgiveness. And I'm comfortable in my own skin again. And when I look in the mirror, the girl staring back at me, she smiles. I have a loving husband who loves me unconditionally, and now I have Trinity. I will continue to share my story and not allow the past to define the woman God intended me to be. My life today holds purpose beyond what I could have ever imagined, and I will never limit what God is capable of doing. I will continue to hold my head up high and walk in the sunlight of His Spirit, for the only thing that can fill a God-sized hole is God. As a survivor, I am here raising my voice, and I ask all of you today to raise yours even louder. Break the curse of normalizing secrets. Slow down and be mindful of those who reach out for help without using the actual words of "help me." They don't know how to say those words, so pause and listen with intention. Be honest, be open about your own truth, because your mess can be someone else's message of hope. Heal from what you've been through. And then use your story, because silence is where people are dying, and your voice could be the reason someone starts living. If you care about those being trafficked and go missing, be loud, be courageous, be fearless, and take God with you. Because you can't fall down while you allow God to hold you up. Thank you for letting me be of service.